I love long-term relationships. That's where I think a lot of the magic is. And especially on LTV and ROI, right? It's much better to have a lifetime value with a client because then it reduces the cost per sale over time.
My name's Mike Lander, and you're listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast, where we bring you actionable insights about sales RFPs, negotiations, and difficult procurement discussions from sales leaders, brand leaders, and procurement leaders. Please subscribe to get updates when new episodes are released. Marcus, hi, very good to see you. Thanks ever so much for joining me on Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Mike. I'm looking forward to it.
That'd be great. I mean, following up on that brilliant event that you ran the other week, which I thoroughly enjoyed, I think this would be a really interesting conversation, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the feedback's been remarkable for that event. I mean, for anyone listening, It was called Closing the Pipeline Quicker. And we had 4 people on a panel, all from slightly different backgrounds and experience. Obviously, you were mainly doing the procurement piece with a couple of salespeople and a mindset coach. But actually, the key things people were saying about closing the pipeline quicker, sales, etc., there was some underlining fundamentals that I think were really powerful and very helpful for people.
Yeah. So before we get into that, Marcus, who are you for the audience? What do you do? And something unusual about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Marcus Hemsley. 15 years ago, I set up a performance agency called Fountain Partnership. We do SEO, pay-per-click, conversion rate optimization, steadily grown it to about just under 50 people now, mainly in the UK, but a small office in North America. Unusual things about me, there's lots of weird and wonderful things, but in terms of things I do from a business perspective, I also run and involved with a company that does retreats for stressed out agency founders, because I've been a stressed out agency founder multiple times, and I started going on these retreats and they really, really helped me drop out of stressful thinking, avoid burnout, and just ultimately enjoy running an agency again, because it can be quite tough at times. I also set up a not-for-profit a few years ago called the Million Tree Pledge, which again, it's founders pledging to plant 1 million trees to take action for the climate emergency. And that's in addition to racing to net zero. So it's not a greenwashing thing where we just plant trees and keep polluting. So those things I think are slightly unusual, Mike, but you might say, no, they're relatively common. I don't know.
No, they definitely are. And no, fantastic. So let's get into the questions. So we had a few kind of like written down questions, but actually you've looked at the questions I sent out and you've got some thoughts on some themes that dropped out of the review that you did. So what kind of themes? This is all about obviously new business development, conversion rate, so closing opportunities, qualifying opportunities, how do you negotiate better deals? That's the broad topics. So what was on your mind when you read those kind of questions?
Yeah, I think the most powerful book I read years ago is one called Trust-Based Selling by, I think you probably know it, by Charles Green. But the premise of it, and it really transformed me, because when I was going into pitches, there's always a sort of sense of, I need to sell. You know what I mean? I need to impress. I need to, and I'm pushing my agenda. It's how can I persuade you, Mike, to buy from me? And actually what Green points to, that if you just come in with the energy of, I just want to do what's best for you. So we're going to have a conversation, Mike, and I'm just going to find out actually what makes sense. Like, what are your challenges? And I'm just going to find out whether I can help or not. And even if I can't help, I'm going to try and introduce you to someone else who can. So I'm not actually turning up. I'm here to sell my agency services. It's more like, so there's been a series of events that have happened in your life that made you think, I need to use an agency or a new agency. Let me just come and listen and hear that story and be really honest. Like, is it in our wheelhouse? And it's so powerful just to say, actually, I'm not sure that we're perfect for you, but my God, a competitor of ours up the road, they're much more attuned to. And people think, well, that's stupid. Well, no, because actually I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years. And those people, when they move jobs, or actually I had one recently, he referred us a bit of business. He went with the other agency I recommended, it worked. And so it's actually the right thing to do on a human level. And I think it's quite rare.
It is.
You turn up. And then the other thing in that is when you come from that energy, you're much more quiet, you're more present, you're doing sort of deep listening, you're really trying to sort of diagnose what their challenges are and really kind of empathize with them. I think for years I always thought empathy was intellectually understanding what was going wrong with them, but it's not. It's actually almost feeling how they're feeling. And my co-founder Rob's brilliant at that. He really gets quiet and really listens to people when he's selling, and I think that sort of connection is really helpful, because I think you and I were saying before we jumped on, Mike, that B2B is all about relationships. That's it. We're selling a relationship. And I think we forget that when we talk about sales. We get caught up in our heads of like all these techniques and spin selling and all these sort of things that people can do. And I think you can, when you're selling to people, you're either in the room or you're in your head, and you do so much better in the room.
You do, absolutely. And and people, we I think we've had this conversation as well about people think, oh well, methodology. I've got methodology, and let me talk about how my methodology will solve your problem. Well, that's all well and good, but unless you've tuned into the client, worked out what their key issues are, and worked out if it's in your wheelhouse, as you say, and then worked out if you're appropriate in terms of, is there a chemistry between two organizations, two people, where you can trust each other to do the right thing, the methodology is completely and utterly irrelevant. In my view, everyone's got one, but it's never the reason that you win, ever.
No, unless they specifically ask about it. And I will drop in that we optimize each stage of the funnel, but only when they're like, it's around a conversation of where they're putting resource. It's like, actually, we put money into paid media and it's not getting the best return on investment. How do we solve that? And so, well, you might be able to solve some things in paid media, but are you looking at the website conversion rate? And then it's asking questions rather than saying, and here's our 10-point conversion rate optimization methodology, and just
correct.
So they're like, our stuff on them. And it goes back to the fundamentals of marketing and sales. It's people care about themselves, not about us. And I really care about my methodology.
And they've got a problem to solve.
Exactly. It's
they've got a problem to solve. They have an outcome they have to achieve, and they've got a timescale within which they've got to achieve it. Yeah.
That's it. And it's understanding that. I mean, I don't go to the doctors and they just start giving me paracetamol as I walk in the door. They ask what my problems are. They really try and diagnose it first and really understand me. Well, the good doctors do at least. And it's just taking that approach, but it's pretty hard. I think the other thing as well, it's hard, like in this economy now, Mike, obviously we know lots of agencies are struggling at the minute. So then you're kind of in fight or flight. You're in your head thinking, I really need to close this. I've got to make payroll at the end of the next month or whatever. And it's one of the hardest things, actually, because you've probably come across this years ago. It's a very basic thing in negotiation, but the idea of the wanting it tax. Whoever wants something on either side of negotiation more ends up having to pay more for it. And actually, desperation smells. If you really want it, you can end up with massive tax of not winning it at all. So I kind of go into every conversation with someone, early stage lead or anyone I might be able to help with, in my mind, this probably isn't going to work out for Fountain. We're not going to work with you, but I'd love to try and help. I've got 16 years experience in digital marketing. I know a lot of people. I'm just here to help and I'm here to listen. And it's actually much, much more enjoyable job when I turn up and just listen from a really nice place and try and understand what's going on.
Absolutely.
In their eyes. And strangely enough, we end up building a relationship, and whether they work with me then or not, it seems to work a bit better. The challenge I have is also getting my team to be more like that, because it's harder for employees. They're naturally a bit more busier. They've got client sort of constraints. They've got a lot of noise in their head, so it's sort of helping them sort of settle down and just be present with people. So I think like trust-based selling and not necessarily wanting it, even if potentially on paper you need it. I think those are the big things. As I read your questions, I thought, I'd love to talk about that, because not everyone even knows, or even if they know it, they don't always do it. And I think that could help people.
So trust. How do you build trust with someone new in business that you're getting to know way before you sign any contract? How do you start to build trust in a very genuine way?
So I always think, I say this to my team, there's only 3 things you do when you meet someone. You can meet their expectations, you can fall short, or you can exceed. It really doesn't take much to exceed expectations. Often it's actually just being interested in them for starters, rather than talking about yourself, and just really caring. And I'm always looking for, what can I do to help, essentially. There's a mantra of serve, don't sell. So I'm looking just to be helpful. I remember actually a few years ago, like I was rushing to work in the morning, and my young son's like, "Daddy, why do you have to go to work?" And I was like, "To help people," which just came out of my subconscious. And I was quite happy with that answer, because imagine a few years before it may have been to make money, to buy you new clothes or whatever.
Yeah,
but it is like, but people feel that. And I also think, like, I remember saying, I do it with networking a lot. I was saying to my MD when she was like, like networking, I don't like going out and pitching and selling. I was like, no, you don't do that. I said, Alice, like, how many coffees have you had just networking the last year? She was like, I don't know, 100. I was like, right. Out of those 100, how many of them really listened, really took the time to get to know you, really seemed to care, and then followed up with something helpful, like a book recommendation or an invitation to an event or something like that? She was like, I don't know, 1 or 2. I was like, right, well, be that 1 or 2 to everyone you meet. And then she got it.
Exactly.
I just have to turn up and be me and be helpful, rather than elevator pitch and, like, have a business card I shove in their face. I mean, not many people do business cards anymore, but we're all adding each other on LinkedIn. But it's all long-termism, Mike. I think the challenge with everything in life is short-term thinking, right? Because short-term stuff, we end up having sugar when we shouldn't. We end up sort of perhaps being a bit pushy with someone and pushing them away because we need it now. We feel like we need it now. But that desperation, short-termism, actually accumulates over a long period of time to people struggling. I always think, like, I was chatting to a prospect that we almost lost and we won back. I was telling you about before, and I said something to them. I think it resonated. I said, "Look, like," because they're like, "Oh, could we start small?" I was like, "Yeah, we can just do some consultancy. Like, as far as I'm concerned, I just want to help you, and I don't want a client for the next 5 weeks or 5 months. I want them for the next 5, 10, 15 years. I want clients for life." And we still have that. We had to let them go last year because they're too small. But our first ever retainer client, they're only paying $1,000 a month, but we kept them on. We had them for 15 years pretty much, and that was nice. And they're a nice local company, and we helped them grow a bit. And they're never going to do much more than that. But I love long-term relationships. That's where I think a lot of the magic is, and especially on LTV and ROI, right? Do you know what I mean? Like, in terms of the magic, I'm being a bit sort of sorry, but let's bring it back to hard commercials. It's much better to have a lifetime value with a client, because then it reduces the cost per sale over time. You need fewer sales. Make it a lot easier. But it's not easy to do and that's the challenge, I think.
So, qualification. How do you qualify opportunities when they come in? And let's take the kind of slightly more formal opportunities that come in, where there's a bit more of a formal written brief, might be an RFP. How do you work out if it's right for you and you're right for them before you start investing 30 person hours in writing a proposal?
Really, it's where it's come from. Do you know what I mean? If it comes from someone we know already, if it's a trusted source and someone who's, for example, already is consulting with that firm and says, actually, you want to put Fountain on your pitch roster. Ideally, it's someone, it could be an old client that's moved there. We've had that recently, actually, with a large pharmaceutical. It was, we're working with another pharmaceutical. Then that stuff, we think, let's go for it. When it's just from one of these sort of networks, or we pay a fee and they're like, it's going out to 6 or 7 other agencies and we're the also-rans, we tend to disqualify these days. We've been burned. We made that mistake loads in the past, Mike. Because ultimately they had their favourites. And we were just there for procurement to be one of the others on the list. Because I've got to look at all the formal RFPs that we've won. I think nearly all of them we had the inside track. I.e., we'd done a couple of small one-off audits or projects for them already. We knew the people there, or we had a mole on the inside. Like, you want those advantages. And we still make mistakes, because sometimes, we lost one recently, which was because pharmaceutical is one of our niches that we do well in. And it was really in our wheelhouse. It was through one of these networks, but and in the end, they ended up staying with the incumbent, which I think I remember you saying, Mike, on your at the event, that it's about, was it 66% of the time they stay with the incumbent? So correct. That's the other thing. So we should have been a bit harder. I think we got excited because it was something that we'd done for other people in that sector very well and had a great track record. So we thought, right, even though this is coming cold and we don't have any of the contacts there, we think that's offset with our brilliant methodology, Mike. So
exactly.
That's the big thing. I think for me, but we can take the first initial sort of discovery call. I think the thing is, as well as how cagey they are, the other thing I've observed over the years is if they're not saying much to me, they're probably saying a lot to someone else. Do you know what I mean? Because everyone, and I know they shouldn't when it's formal, but you just get a sense if they already know you, they're giving a lot away, and they're more happy to give more access. They're happy to, you just get a sense that they're really open with you. And then when I've been on the other side of it, where clearly we're just someone that's just another one on the list, they don't really know us. They're a bit more cagey. They're like, we can't really say that. It feels almost too formal, and you're like, eh. So it is a tricky one. But I think it's really, again, it goes back to relationships. Like obviously, it has to be in our wheelhouse, but then and also just the relationship with not this relationship, but the interaction with the people when we first speak to them. If we get a sense that it's quite cold, if they're not talking early, they're not going to start talking more. It's not always a prerequisite, but it is tricky, Mike, because like you say, it's so many hours that you put into these RFPs, and then if you're going to get a bid writer or someone, if it's more public sector-y, so it's tricky. So we're much more discerning from having been burnt, to be honest. We had one a few months ago, which was we're one of 7 agencies, and they wouldn't tell us who the other agencies were. And even though it was someone who put us in there, who was a consultant who had recently consulted with them. And he's like, no, I think this is a good one for you. We're one of 7. We just got a sense from the marketing manager that there wasn't a natural let's give these guys everything they need to do the best job possible. You can kind of smell it. I think there's a gut instinct piece there as well, Mike, rather than also it's the checklist. But I don't know if that is similar to what you've seen in your experience, both sides of the fence, right?
I mean, I think when I was running processes in my old role as a buyer. Then once I'm running a process, I always ran what I believe was a fair process. But of course, what happens before that, Marcus, is before I send out the RFP to 3 or 5 agencies, I've spoken to one who we prefer because my stakeholders said, I particularly want X. I go, that's interesting. Okay. If they're credible and we've worked with them before and they've delivered great results, I'll probably talk to X in advance. Will probably help, informally, they would help shape the RFP, and then it would go out. Once it goes out, then I keep a very formal process running. But you're right, before it goes out, someone's helped me shape that, especially if the more complex and esoteric the problem, and the fewer times that we've actually solved it, i.e. it's a new problem, the more likely it is I need to talk to someone, a specialist, who's solved it before. Because they need to help me write the RFP to make sure we've got the right problem statement. And if it's not you, it's someone else.
and if you're X, right? Because you've had those pre-meetings.
Yeah,
we've had that a few times, but we want support with the RFP. Actually, 2 ones in the last couple of years. We knew we were quids in because they asked us to help with some of the questions for the RFP. You know what I mean? So actually, it makes complete sense. I guess the answer to the question is, well, if you're X or not, if you're preferred. Doesn't mean, I'm sure sometimes X still fell short on the day, Mike. You're going to run a fair thing.
Yeah,
it's
correct.
Just of the inside track. Have I got the inside track? And then it's just it's a bet.
Yeah.
Am I going to use 30, 40 business development hours on this when I could be putting that resource elsewhere, and what's going to bring the best returns? And that's the sort of thinking in bets methodology that you need to take in business.
Definitely. Having a rigorous qualification scorecard of some kind and a rigorous process that you go through pays huge dividends. It improves conversion rates because you then only work on the ones that you've got a very good probability of winning.
Absolutely. Yeah, we used to have a sort of basic scorecard of our qualification score, and sort of have 7 metrics of similar that sort of things like, have we got a mold? Have they given us access? Are they talking to us? Will they tell us who the other agencies are in the pitch? Will they let us have meetings, pre-pitch? So also you keep pushing for extra bits, don't you? And if you get hard no's, well, you kind of wonder actually if you are X. But if you're that one, if you're the favourite, 9 times out of 10. So those are the ones to go for. And then to your point, you have to say, well, I've done this before. I'm very good at solving this specialist problem. Here's some examples of how we've done it. And that's got to be the way forward. I think the trouble is, and we've made that mistake. You get an RFP and the numbers look very juicy. And you think, I've done a bit in that sector. Probably could win it. And you look at the pipeline, it's not as full as you would like it to be, and go, well, it'd look a lot nicer with this. Again, it's short-term thinking, and you kind of know deep down, but
it is.
And I'm sure there has been like the one in a 100 or something. I'm sure there's been the odd RFP very occasionally that we kind of, we went for, and we perhaps weren't the favourite, and it worked out. But again, it's the probability is so low. You just got to look at where you're putting your hours ultimately.
I mean, let me just kind of try something with you. So let's say an RFP turns up. So it's come from a FTSE 100 brand. It's in a sector that you kind of work in broadly. But the relationship you've got with them is one of your team met someone at a conference. They exchanged business cards, and then this RFP turns up. And the RFP also says you can't speak to anyone, a human being, until you're shortlisted to present on the day. And there's no budget defined, and I've not given you any targets, and there's no selection criteria. Would you bid?
No, sadly not.
It's ludicrous.
It's
ludicrous.
No, it might be worth a quick phone call that says, the team.
Exactly.
But it's worth just nurturing that relationship as well, and just saying, look, obviously, and it's probably the person that my colleagues met, like they haven't written the whole thing. So we would use it as more of a what we would do is try and sort of sell in some sort of hook product or something. So to just try and get the conversation with that person and say, well, what's the actual problem you're doing? Try and work it from a different angle. So we wouldn't say, look, we can't go ahead with these reasons, doesn't fit our criteria. But it seems like quite a laborious process. We're concerned, you're not giving this information out, in a timely manner. You might not get the best people for the job. What are the actual challenges you're trying to solve? Is there anything we could do in the short run, et cetera, et cetera? Start inviting them to our events. I just get with them that way, and then build a long-term relationship, like you say, Mike. But that's the only thing. So you want to try and do as much as you can with that. Because you're trying to sell the lead, I suppose, but that's not a very good thing to sell to someone. So no, I think that running through my flow chart in my head, I think we'd try and just nurture the relationship, but politely decline the offers for the RFP.
I think you're absolutely right. There was a great book written ages ago by an ex-private equity guy, and the title of the book was called The Next Bounce of the Ball. I think it's a good example of what you're looking for is the next bounce of the ball. It's not this opportunity, but now you've got someone that there's a name, and you can start to build a relationship with them, because the next time the ball bounces, you want to be in a position whereby they do know you, they've got a good level of trust with you, they know what problems you solve, they know what your kind of credibility is and the outcomes you deliver. Now it's a real opportunity.
Exactly that is what we were saying actually in the pre-call about that. There's never any closed doors. Do you know what I mean? It's never one way. It's like you've got one chance, the door's closed forever. All decisions are reversible. And I like this analogy of the bounce of the ball. Okay, it's back to you, but I think, as I was saying before, I think humans are quite binary. We say, well, that opportunity is dead. Therefore, all the relationships, let's not nurture. Therefore, let's not get anything from it. And we try and move on to the next new. I think there's a cognitive bias towards new and shiny that humans have, which is problematic. I think it's caused a lot of problems in sales and marketing. I feel interesting, thought experiment, Mike. I'm guilty of this as well. So say someone comes to me and says, Marcus, one of our biggest, longest standing clients wants us to pitch for a new division, 10 grand a month. Brilliant. Okay, I'm quite excited by that. And then 2 minutes later, my salesperson calls, Marcus, got a big lead in with a flashy brand worth 10 grand a month. What am I more excited about? The big flashy thing, FTSE. But actually on paper, that's absurd. I should put more resource into growing the existing. They've been with us for years. We know the trust. We know they're good payers. But yet emotionally, I'm more excited about the new thing. And I see it as a cognitive bias. I see that as Daniel Kahneman, would probably hit me for calling this, but it's a novelty bias. It's it's a shiny item. Why do we go after that? And I think actually, if you look at sales and marketing, Mike, that's why I think everyone over indexes on new leads, new business.
Correct.
Rather than taking resource out of marketing potentially and nurturing the pipeline, so increasing sales conversion rate. increasing sales conversion rate from, say, 25% to 30% is the equivalent of buying 20% more traffic, or 20% more leads, sorry, I'm thinking marketing funnels. But it's more expensive to buy 20% more leads than it is just to nudge up the sales conversion rate, as I'm sure you know. And it's much more profitable to expansion sale, upsell, cross-sell. Yeah, it doesn't feel exciting, for me at least. I can only speak for my own body and reality, but I imagine it's for other people. So I think we just need to always be very mindful of that, of like following our excitement doesn't always mean it's the smartest thing to do.
I mean, it's the curse of the entrepreneur. The shiny new thing is the curse of the entrepreneur.
It really is, because a lot of us are driven by a new exciting idea. I was speaking to an entrepreneur this morning, actually, who's had an agency for a similar amount of time as me. And that's why he says, I've got a couple of side projects, a bit like me with my Million Tree Pledge and with the Reconnect retreats and stuff. One, because I think they're adding value as well, but because they're newer and younger, I could add more ideas to it. I think, especially when you get into a bigger company that's more established, it's slower to affect change. So the new shiny stuff is less in there. But again, with all of this, it's all fine, but it's just being aware of the benefits and drawbacks of having this and going, I get excited by new and shiny. Okay.
Exactly.
I need people around me that will continue to execute at a high level with stuff I'm not putting my attention on. But it's just, every benefit has a drawback, and it's just being very mindful of that, which again, we're not always. So it's, and that ties into the short term.
Exactly.
Forget that, I'm doing this now. This feels exciting, which is a problem with humans.
So we're actually 26 minutes in to the recording. So to respect your time, what I'd like to do is just kind of draw this to a conclusion. Just for people listening. So anyone listening, they're an agency leader, they're a consultancy leader, they're building their business. They're looking at their pipeline going, oh my God, it's not quite where it needs to be. Over the many, many, many years of selling, building pipeline, business development, what are the kind of 2 or 3 big things you'd say to people that are facing that, oh, it doesn't look so good. Are we going to be okay in the next 6 months? What can I do about it? What would you say to them about what can I do about it?
Yeah, so I help a couple of smaller agencies as well. And over Christmas, they were like, oh goodness, like we need to start networking and making more noise online. Like our pipelines are looking bad. And I said, well, if your pipeline's looking bad now and your revenue now, like networking and doing top of the funnel stuff isn't going to help. That's a 6-month play, right? 6 to 9 months. That's medium-term pipeline.
Exactly.
Short-term pipeline, go to the bottom of the funnel. So I always say to people, so start right at the bottom. Go to people who already give you money and people who have given you money. So, because the trust is already there, right?
Yep.
So you go to existing clients and you can sell more stuff to them, fine. And then what you can do a win-back strategy, which we've been playing with recently, and you can make a list of clients you've lost, clients have gone dormant, let's not call them lost, dormant clients. Anyone who's given you money in the last 3 or 4 years, make a list and just have a coffee with. If you're going to network with someone, you may as well network with someone who's given you money in the past. I advised 3 or 4 agencies to do
Brilliant idea.
All of them came back and said, bloody hell, Marcus. I said, look, I set an ambitious target, set 20 coffees, and then over sort of November and December, 20 coffees. And I bet you with people who are existing clients who have given you money in the past or dormant clients, I will bet you at least 1 or 2 of them, and most of them had 3 or 4, said, actually, you know what? We should probably do a bit more with you because this has happened and this has happened. Because you're turning up, you're serving, you're not selling, etc. So short term, bottom of the funnel. And then also that expands onto perhaps more your area, Mike, which is the current pipeline. Actually, like how can we re-engage? A great, if I can give a shout out for you as well, a great thing for people to do is to go onto YouTube and type in "Closing the Pipeline Quicker" event. Maybe put Mike Lander's name in it, and you will find the video of the recording of the event we did. The recording we did of the event we did a few weeks ago. That is a whole 90-minute masterclass. Obviously, Mike was fantastic in it, talking about exactly those things to do to close the pipeline quicker. So for the next 3 to 6 months, bottom of funnel. And then obviously you still need a thing of outreach. You still need to be outreaching to your ideal type, have an ICP, know exactly who they are, reach out to them. I reach out to them using Dripify on LinkedIn, and then I invite them to events. Because I won't reaching out and say, hey, do you want to buy some SEO or pay-per-click? No, bugger off. If I reached out to them and say, hey, look, we're putting on an event for CMOs in finance, just connecting in case you're interested. I did about
exactly
the numbers from a campaign. I did about 250 in the last couple of weeks. I've had, I think, 61 connection yeses. Of that, 10 have come back and said, wow, you're really interested in those events, Marcus, let me know when. Great. Guess what I'm going to do next week when the Eventbrite thing's live? There you go. 10 of my ideal ICP coming to my roundtable, but they're not going to buy from me
Perfect.
for a year. But it doesn't matter. I'm making friends with them. I'm adding value.
Nope.
So you're covering both short-term pipeline and long-term.
Precisely.
To give you revenue certainty. So those are my sort of top tips. And then when you're engaging all of them, trust-based selling, right? You serve, you don't sell. You try and solve their problems. You really care about them more than you care about your own business. I think if you do those fundamentals and be a trusted advisor, sort of stuff that Mike talks about, I think that can make a real difference.
Marcus, it's been amazing. Thank you ever so much. Great piece of advice at the end as well. Really, really, really great. Go to the bottom of the funnel. Absolutely. Definitely. If it's a short-term problem. Marcus, brilliant. As always, where can people find out more about you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Marcus Hemsley. I think I'm the only one. Or you can go to fountainpartnership.co.uk. That's my agency's website. But yeah, LinkedIn's where I hang out. I don't do any other social media because I'm boring. I just do business stuff. And that's me.
Marcus, it's been brilliant. Thanks ever so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast series with your host, Mike Lander. Please subscribe so that you'll catch all the next episodes.